Hiya. Welcome today. And today we're going to be talking about this lovely book, Annie Stanley All At Sea by Sue Teddern. And I've been a bit more organised than I was last time, and I've actually written something to introduce it. So Sue Teddern is a former magazine feature writer and comedy script writer, most notably Birds of a Feather. And she's also a script writing tutor. And Annie Stanley All At Sea is her first novel. And the blurb is, when unfulfilled teacher Annie's father dies, she decides to take his ashes without her family's consent on a tour of the 31 sea areas that make up Radio 4's shipping forecast, which she and her father used to listen to together. Her journey, both literal and emotional, reconnects her with old friends and family and gives her a much needed chance to reset her life. And The Observer says this charming, well-judged debut novel balances seaside kitsch and mordant humour. I had to look up what mordant means. It means biting or sharp. But what do we think? Do we think it balances kitsch and biting wit, or do we think something else? So my first question is, if this book was an item of food, what do you think it would be? Because I quite like thinking of books in terms of food, because you'll get a Booker Prize winning novel and it'll be like going out for a very posh meal. And then you'll get maybe other books that are more like having a bag of crisps in a service station. And so I just wondered, in that sort of range, where do you think it might lie?
Okay, I'm going for a jam sandwich.
Why?
Because I thought it was a bit unoriginal and not really very appetizing, but I did finish it because obviously I would never leave a jam sandwich unfinished.
Any other thoughts? It's Anne. It's Anne, isn't it?
Anne, yes. Sorry, I haven't got my name up, have I? I'll do
got your name for a moment there. What did you think? Jam sandwich?
Fish and chips.
Fish and
a nice fish and chips. I don't mean a nasty, greasy, horrible one. We've got a great fish chipping near us, so yeah, nice fish and chips.
Why fish and chips then?
Pardon? Why
fish and chips?
I suppose the sea, in a sense, the sea prompted me to think of that, and I mean, it's sort of fun to eat. That's fun to eat. It was fun to read. A bit of a little bit of substance to it. I think I probably thought a bit more than Ian did. But so there's my food analogy. I mean, I've got another particular reason why I liked it. I'll leave that alone.
Oh, why did you?
Go around with the food thing first before we come back.
No. We can move on from that. What was it? Why did you particularly?
Well, because my husband and I, for many, many years, we're afraid a bit too old now, used to sail a small boat, 32-foot yacht, and therefore things like shipping forecasts were quite meaningful to us, especially as a lot of it was getting it all online, and this way you can get weather forecasts now. It actually was listening to the shipping forecast. So although we didn't go to most of the places, I mean, some of them covered areas where we sailed, so it resonated.
Yeah, I like that. See, my husband used to sail a lot, and in fact, I'll go get this now. I bought him this. It's inside out. I bought him this T-shirt the other day, and it was before I got the book. But I don't know if you've seen these. You can get T-shirts with bits of the shipping forecast on. Is it back to front?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Now I haven't seen that. Yeah. Yeah.
I liked that as well. I liked the whole shipping forecast bit. And when I thought about it, I thought it was. I didn't go as far as a jam sandwich. I think I was in between you two. I was like a nice piece of Victoria sponge, maybe a lemon drizzle cake, because I thought there was a little bit of sharpness in there, but actually it was more of a comfort. It was kind of a comfort.
It was a comfort. Fish and chips is comfort too. Yeah, definitely.
I think if I would also go fish and chips with lots of salt and vinegar on, because it did have a little bit of a bite. Yeah, it wasn't just stodge. Jam sandwich is quite scathing, but anyway, onwards and upwards. What did we think of the character of Annie Stanley? Was she likeable? Did we engage with her straight away?
Claire, have you noticed that Christine's joined us? Is
Oh
she
yeah,
on?
sorry, I was like,
Hello, Christine.
hi.
All right.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi, everyone. I was going to say that I thought it was like a warm bowl of porridge. So it was kind of hearty and a bit comforty, but I think I liked the start of it, but then I think it lost its way, and I think she was trying to throw too many sort of scenarios into it. I think if she'd left it as a bit of a re-stepping her childhood with the ashes, I think that might have been a nicer story, maybe. But I think it was, it was all around her love life and her sister's love life, and I think it lost its way a little bit there. But
did you think that was a bit contrived, the whole sister's love life, discovering herself as a lesbian subplot thing? Did you feel that was a bit of an unnecessary?
Yeah, and it I don't know, it feels a bit like it's one of those topics at the moment that everyone seems to write about as well. It's kind of, I don't know, it's trying to touch all bases or whatever. But I think the first third of the book I really enjoyed, actually, and I thought it was quite interesting, and I've been to Eastbourne actually recently, so I think she's from Hove, so and yeah, so that I kind of was connected to her being down in that area. There's a lighthouse down there in Eastbourne and all of that, and it's got a lighthouse on the cover, and I just thought, oh yeah, this will be a nice story. But I don't know, I think it became less about this path with her father and finding a nice resting place, and more about all this other stuff and these boyfriends that she was getting back in touch with and all that kind of stuff. And I just thought, it's kind of lost its way. I think she maybe should have kept it more about her childhood and her relationship to her dad, because that's what it was about, wasn't it?
So do you think in trying to sort of almost tick too many boxes by having the romance and having her sister's romance and having dealing with her relationship with her mother-in-law and all of the other things she put on, do you think that detracted from the main theme, which was her dealing with her grief? And
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think it was like was it Rob's auntie or someone that she visited, didn't she? The elderly lady who didn't like the neighbours in the sheltered accommodation she was living in. And I thought that was probably better than all this other relationship stuff, actually. That would have been better. And if she had gone on this mad kind of travel around the UK, that's understandable in that circumstance. But some of the other stuff was just it felt like she was filling up. She had to have something happen in each of these places that she went to. And it was all bit, to me, it was a bit random.
It's a bit contrived, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
What did everybody else think? Did anybody else think it was a bit contrived, or that there were too many subplots, or it treated the main theme too superficially? Maybe. What did you think, Anne?
I didn't think that while I was reading it, but thinking about it now, I think you're probably right. Maybe she shouldn't have tried to get. She wasn't doing the whole of the shipping forecast anyway, because some of it's out in the middle of the ocean. She couldn't get anywhere near it. So maybe she should have pruned it down and done a more manageable number, so that she didn't have to force getting an event or a meeting or something in every place. If she had, less places, then it wouldn't have seemed quite so overfull of meeting people and so on. I don't know.
What did you think?
I've got more of a problem really with the character of Annie herself, because I felt it was lazy. It was just like sort of a second-rate Bridget Jones type of scenario, where she's sitting at home eating all her Tunnocks tea cakes, watching old movies, and I just felt that was lazy. It was just sort of borrowed, really, and it didn't really ring true, because she'd managed to get qualified as a teacher and start teaching. We all know how tough that is as a job, but I just felt she hadn't had enough setbacks to justify this lapse into a kind of stasis, which she starts with in the novel, and I just didn't feel that was credible, really, and not a well-written character at all. So that's started me off on the wrong foot with it. I mean, the road trip was fine. I thought the idea of going round all the shipping forecast areas was okay, not very original either, really. But the actual road trip itself, you know, when she's telling us she's going down the A15, which is quite near me, I thought, you know, it's not very exciting, is it?
Yeah.
So, no,
There were areas of padding in there then.
yeah, and the whole car hire business, I just, you know, it just made it all rather too easy hiring a car. Would have been nice if she was being a bit more challenged, really, and kind of sticking to public transport where you're meeting more people would have been more interesting, I think.
So you felt that she was sort of a two-dimensional, sort of quite a superficially drawn character, and you didn't. Did you not like her?
Did I what? Sorry.
Did you like her?
No, I didn't really, because I didn't feel that she should be in this predicament that she was in. So, you know, I didn't really have a lot of sympathy for her. Obviously, she's just lost her dad. And I think really more could have been made of this tension with the mother-in-law, because that, you know, we don't know where all dad's money's gone, but potentially, you know, all dad's money is now in the bank account of the mother-in-law, and she could have made a bit more of that tension, I think, really. That was more of a storyline that I would have been interested in.
So do you think it was just that it was that you don't engage with that genre, because it's like a rom-com sort of genre, isn't it? Do you think that's just not your cup of tea?
I don't read that sort of thing very often, that's true. But, you know, I thought, comparing it to Bridget Jones' Diary, it was a lot less subtle and a bit lame, really.
Did you agree? Isabel, I'm getting all my names wrong today. It's Ian, Anne and
Christine.
Yeah, sorry, I disappeared. I have to just get the dog.
So sorry. Right, Christine, what did you think? Do you think it was a failure in the writing, or the genre not being Ian's cup of tea, or how did you feel about?
Yeah, no, there was definitely, it wasn't the best book. So yeah, and like you say, it was a bit like the start of it was definitely a bit like Bridget Jones's Diary, but just not as good. Yeah, it wasn't as good. And like you say, it was, I don't know, I think it could have been better. I'm not sure she's the best writer, and I was reading two books at the same time as well. I was reading this one and another one, and the other one, it was a really good book. I wasn't keen on the ending, but the book itself was a real page turner, and I really struggled to think, I've got to get through this.
Really? And it's quite hard to keep going with it.
Yeah, because I felt as if I'm finding time to read it, and I'm not really enjoying it, if you know what I mean. I think otherwise this other book, it was so much more, and actually it was a harder topic. It was about the war and this relationship with this girl in it who was blind, and so it was a harder topic to read. But actually,
All the Light We Cannot See.
That's the one. Yeah,
very good, isn't it?
It's really good. Yeah, it wasn't the ending I thought, but and then you can't compare that book.
You can't.
With it.
You just can't compare that with this. But I just wonder if you accept that this is just a holiday read rom-com.
It is a holiday read. It's a beach read, isn't it?
In that sort of genre, as a holiday read rom-com-y sort of. Do you feel it was good for that genre?
Yeah. I think if you just want something light-hearted, you know, it wasn't overly deep, I don't think, but it yeah, but I think this is the thing. When I'm reading a book, I'm always thinking about, have I got time, you know, all that, I'm fitting it in, you know, because I'm working full time. So it's one of those things where I want to read things that, you know, I really like, and I will dump a book if I, you know, I don't like it, you know. I don't sort of sit there and try and get through to the end, you know. I will dump it.
It sounds like you and Ian are on this. So what do you think, Anne? Did you?
I think it was a good holiday read, right in its genre. I was reading it when, you know, I was a lot else going on, so it was the kind of read that was right for me. So anything sort of deep and challenging, I wouldn't have been coping with at that time.
Yeah.
I wanted something light, escapist, absolutely fine. I read it quite fast, you know, didn't have any trouble getting through it at all. So, you know, it's kind of horses for courses, isn't it? And horses for, you know, the right situation that the reader's in as well.
I'm with you actually, Anne, because I actually found it quite easy to read. I sat in the hammock and I just ploughed through it, and it wasn't challenging, but I think she hit all her sort of narrative markers. You know, there was a clear catalyst moment, there was a turning point, the issues were resolved at the end, her character arcs, all of that happened, and there was a bit of humour in there. But I think it is, as you pointed out, it's sort of Hobbit's type, and you can't really compare it with an amazing book like All the Light We Cannot See. Just in a completely different zone somehow.
Yeah.
So it's almost a case of judging it on its own merits rather than against a Pulitzer Prize winner.
Fair point.
Yeah, you can't compare them, but yeah.
It sounds like two of you weren't really drawn into the story at all, and yet Anne and I were drawn in. And Ian, you thought that the characters were quite two-dimensional, and so Anne, did you also think the characters were two-dimensional, or did they work better for you?
Yeah, I mean, they varied. I mean, some of them, you know, you didn't meet for very long, so perhaps there wasn't a lot to them. But I thought there was a bit more to some of the characters. I mean, I quite engaged with the main character, and perhaps and the woman as well that's been mentioned before. You know, the older woman in the sheltered housing. Yeah, somewhere between being two-dimensional and, you know, fully three-dimensional. That's possible. You know, not really sort of caricature two-dimensional, but obviously not fully developed in the way that you would get in sort of more substantial books that weren't just light reads where you would expect more to the character.
Yeah. I was just wondering, so Christine, I'm going to ask you, do you think that knowing that Sue Teddern was a script writer for Birds of a Feather, does that make more sense that of the way she drew her characters? Did they feel like they were plucked from central casting, so she had a such and such type and a such and such type and a such? Does that make more sense now you know she's a comedy script writer?
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, right, okay.
You just missed the first bit. So yeah, she used to write for she's a script writer by trade, and she used to write, well, she started off as a women's magazine journalist, and then she used to write comedy scripts for Birds of a Feather, amongst other things. And so I think once you know that, it kind of makes more sense about the way the kind of character she had. She's obviously
it does. That's the thing. I don't tend to think about the author, to be honest, when I read books. I just kind of think into the story. But it does. It does seem to make sense. I think the other thing as well is I don't like at the moment is that there seems to be that this undercurrent that you have to have these certain, you know, characters in these books. And in a way, I do like to go to maybe some of the older books, and you haven't got all that undercurrent there that you have to have, you know, all these tick box type things. So yeah, and I think I've come across a few of those lately, which I just feel like the story is revolving around, because these are popular, you know, expectation in books at the moment. So if you throw a couple of those into a book, or whether you've ticked that box. So, and I felt as if that one was one of those.
By having the sort of lesbian subplot,
Yeah.
and also by having lots of older characters in it as well. So there was
Yeah.
we're not ageist, we're not
Yeah, exactly. We've got all different.
friendly, and
Yeah.
I felt it was almost like somebody going through their diversity and equality.
Exactly. Yeah.
In order to gain a wider. So do you think then, Ian? Do you think she was writing for the market then, rather than writing from her heart?
I do, and there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, if you want to get a book published, you've got to aim it at the right category. So no complaints about that. And I think you're right, Claire. It's probably just not what I normally read, and I probably shouldn't be criticizing it for being what it is, because obviously she's a very experienced writer. I mean, Birds of a Feather was a really good comedy. I remember it well, and she's sort of gone for that segment, and fair play to her. It's not up to me to say whether it was good or bad in that sense, but there were just elements, particularly I felt the character herself, which didn't resonate with me, and I didn't feel rang true.
Mm-hmm. And do you think it might have worked better as a TV script rather than as a novel? Could you see this like as an ITV Sunday night, Annie Stanley going around the country?
That's a good suggestion. Yeah. That
would have worked well, I think.
Yeah,
it probably would actually. I'd probably enjoy more watching that story than reading it. Definitely.
Yeah, you get the scenery, not just in your mind's eye.
Yeah, the whole Humber Bridge, for instance. I mean, not to be missed.
Yeah, because she picked her locations really carefully, didn't she? She went really nice parts of the country with really beautiful backdrops. So it might work quite well. Yeah, we can rewrite it. So what else did I want to ask? So, and also, just so the one thing that bothered me was the catalyst plausible? Her taking this urn and running off with it. That sort of catalysed the whole thing. But was that actually plausible for everybody else? What did you guys think? Was that a plausible way to start things off? I know she needed
I didn't have a problem with that. I didn't have a problem with it. No.
That's interesting. Okay. How about Christine? What did you think?
Yeah, I like the idea actually, because I think that that probably could happen.
Okay.
Yeah. Because that was she kept going back to the tea towel, didn't she? That he had his his best tea towel, and that there's something that she very much associated with him. So and also if you're she was worried that he was going to get sprinkled in the wrong place. So I could imagine that happening. It didn't seem like didn't seem like a birds of a feather idea, some comedy based idea. No, I thought it was okay.
And you were okay with it, were you, Anne?
Yeah, absolutely fine. Yeah.
It's only me then. I just thought it just seemed to be a little bit. Really? Would you really? When everybody's in that, I don't know. That's just me. I know she needed it in order to set the story in motion. But when that was the one thing when I read it, I was like, okay. And how about all the patchworky stuff? What did we think about that?
The knitting, you mean?
Yeah.
No, yeah, sorry.
I've forgotten about the knitting.
Yeah, but it was like patchworky knitting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Do we?
It worked.
Because a lot of people got into knitting in lockdown.
Yeah.
Harry Styles' cardigan, I'm thinking of. So did she cynically shove the knitting thing in because a lot of people have started knitting, and it's just like, and that's another thing, along with the lesbian love interest, and it's another thing that will kind of sell it, or is it a charming addition to a charming story?
I think it worked for me because it was the whole idea of her getting her life back together again, and the idea of recreating things and stitching them together sort of was quite a nice analogy for what she was actually doing on that road trip. So yeah, it worked. That worked for me.
Yeah, I like that. Okay. Anybody else think the knitting was a cynical add-on or an interesting metaphor for her life? Any views?
Yeah, I quite liked it. I knit and crochet myself, so yeah, it was interesting. She just put random things in different shops, which is kind of what I do. But you know, I tend to buy things and think, what can I make with that in the future, rather than, oh, you know, one ball for one square. But no, I thought it was okay. Yeah, and I think there was something in the back of the book, wasn't there, where she had to ask, was it a Women's Institute or something, about how you would actually make those squares,
Yeah.
the right tension, depending on, you know.
You have to kind of knit on the diagonal or something.
Not a knitter herself.
Yeah.
It's quite funny how she was acquiring the balls of wool at sort of charity shops and being given them by people. That was quite nice. Yeah.
Yeah, link the places, didn't it? Just had a physical thing that would link the places there.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, good. Okay. So overall, would you say that it's I know some of you struggled with it and some of you found it a comforting read, but would you say it was an easy read overall?
Yes.
Even though you struggled to finish it, Christine?
Yeah, it was an easy read, but I found it just a little bit lackluster, to be honest.
So it's just too easy for you. You just prefer something that's more challenging. I wanted
something a bit more interesting. Yeah, especially with the other one. But I do that sometimes, where I read an easier read and then a harder read at the same time, and then I sort of, if I fancy something, you know, which one I pick up. But that one was a little bit too much of an easy read, really. Yeah.
Would I don't know if it's too soon to ask this, but I was going to say, would you recommend it, and if so, who would you recommend it to? Or what sort of
people looking for their holiday reads? Yeah, recommend it.
Yeah, no,
so Christine, you would
probably go to the charity shop now rather than on to my friend, because I pass books around to my friend, and but yeah, I'm not sure. I think that will be a charity shop one, I think.
Are you one of those people who prescribes books for your friends? I've got a friend like that who'll say, oh, you need to read this.
Yeah, and I've got another friend who reads lots, and she's semi-retired, and I get, you know, she gives me 3 books at a time, so yeah, so I'm trying to get through hers as well, but this one I probably wouldn't pass on.
And would you recommend it to anyone or pass it on to anybody?
As I say, somebody who's looking for something light for, you know, for their mini break or their holiday or something. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like maybe if you're on a journey and you couldn't concentrate very much, like maybe if you were on a train or
just light escapist reading. Yes, I mean I
would.
Ian, recommend it on that basis.
I probably wouldn't. You know, I didn't hate it, but I just felt it was a bit lame.
Kind of damning with faint praise, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think, do you know what? I quite enjoyed it, and although I wouldn't recommend it to any of my sort of ready friends,
yeah, exactly.
I would recommend it to maybe somebody who was convalescing, or you know, they were going through something and they just needed something to read that was kind of like a nice warm blanket rather than something challenging. Because I think there are times when you don't necessarily want to be challenged and you want something sort of life affirming and quite light. So I would recommend it to someone who was in that situation. I don't know, maybe if they'd just been sacked, or you know, or they were suffering from chronic fatigue, or you know, something where they just wanted something nice.
Yeah, something not related to bereavement. Yeah, I think
because it is quite comforting. I think it's a bit like you know, watching Gogglebox or something like that. There's something quite nice and life affirming about it, even though, as you say, it's not exactly challenging or it's not going to give you any deep insights. I thought that it was quite I'm with the observer, actually. I thought it was kind of quite charming, really. So I think we need to now, does anybody else have anything to add? It's not because I'm aware it's not a very deep book, so there's not a huge amount to say, but does anybody want to say anything else about it? Otherwise we can give our star ratings. So we give our star ratings then. Christine, what would you give it? I'm going to hold it up so people can see. What would you give this book?
I'd say 3.
3.
Yeah.
Go, yes, it's 3 to 4, I'm not quite sure which. 3.5.
3.5.
2.5.
2.5. Oh, I'll give it a 4 because I think of its type, it was a good, as a sort of rom-com comfort read. If you take it as that, it ticks the boxes for that type of read. And as a debut novel, I think it's, you know, it's pretty good. But yeah, don't read it if you want something challenging. Is that it? If we said all we did, does anybody want to add anything to that? I don't think there's much more to say, is there?
No.
Not really, no.
Not bad is the general assessment.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Okay.